Good evening. Tonight, a major development raising urgent questions about the readiness of the United States military. A new analysis from one of Washington's most respected defense research institutions has revealed that the United States has depleted significant portions of 7 major categories of missiles, and experts are now warning of a near-term risk that American armed forces could find themselves short on munitions if a future conflict were to arise. This is a story about military preparedness, defense spending, and the strategic calculations facing the Pentagon at a critical moment in American foreign policy. The report, published this week by the Center for Strategic and International Studies known as CSIS, paints a detailed picture of how rapidly the United States has drawn down its weapons inventories since entering into conflict with Iran. The analysis was authored by Mark Canchin, a retired United States Marine Corps colonel, and Chris Park, a research associate at CSIS. What their findings show is both significant in scope and serious in implication for American military strategy going forward. According to the CSIS analysis, the United States has used at least 45% of its stockpile of precision strike missiles since the conflict with Iran began. It has consumed 50% of its terminal high-altitude area defense interceptors, the system widely known as THAAD, and it has depleted nearly half of its Patriot ballistic interceptor missile stockpile. All of this has occurred within the first 7 weeks of the conflict with Iran. That timeline is central to understanding why defense analysts and lawmakers are expressing concern. To be clear on one point, the report makes explicitly, the United States currently has sufficient missiles to continue its military operations against Iran without operational limitations. The concern being raised here is not about the present conflict. The concern is about what comes next, specifically, the readiness of the United States military should a future conflict emerge, particularly in the Pacific region, where the potential for confrontation with a major power like China remains a central pillar of American strategic planning. The CSIS report notes that prior to the conflict with Iran, American munitions stockpiles were already considered insufficient. The Iran war has accelerated that drawdown considerably. CSIS now estimates it would take between 1 and 4 years to restock the 7 major categories of munitions back to pre-war levels. The report states that the diminished stockpiles have created a near-term risk, and that a war against a capable peer competitor, the report specifically names China, would consume munitions at rates even greater than those seen in the current Iran conflict. This assessment stands in notable contrast to public statements made by senior American officials. President Donald Trump stated at the outset of the Iran conflict that munitions stockpiles had never been higher or better, and that the United States possessed a virtually unlimited supply of these weapons. Chief Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell told Fortune magazine that the military has everything it needs to execute at the time and place of the president's choosing, and that the United States has executed multiple successful operations across combatant commands while ensuring the U.S. military possesses a deep arsenal of capabilities, as this report makes clear. However, independent defense analysts are drawing a more cautious picture. Coming up, we take a closer look at the financial dimensions of this story. Stay with us. Welcome back. We continue now with a deeper look at the financial landscape surrounding the United States military's munitions situation, from defense contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars to a proposed defense budget described in historic terms. The economic dimensions of this story are as significant as the strategic ones. In the past 2 months, the United States government has moved to address its munitions shortfall by brokering deals with major defense contractors. Among the most notable is a partnership with Honeywell Aerospace, which will surge production of critical munitions components following a $500 million multi-year investment. According to the Pentagon, President Donald Trump has also requested a budget of $1.5 trillion for defense spending in fiscal year 2027, characterized by the Pentagon as the largest year-over-year jump in defense spending since World War II. Against that backdrop, the immediate costs of the Iran conflict are coming into sharper focus. Using data from the CSIS report, Fortune magazine calculated that the United States has already spent approximately $24 billion on the 7 major munitions categories used in the conflict. Public policy expert and Harvard Kennedy School lecturer Linda Bilmes has projected the total cost of the war is likely to exceed $1 trillion, citing the administration's underestimation of short-term infrastructure damage costs and long-term expenses such as lifetime disability benefits for thousands of veterans. The issue of cost extends into the specific economics of how the United States is fighting. Iran's Shahd drones each cost between $20,000 and $50,000 to produce, according to Reuters, while a single Patriot interceptor missile costs approximately $4 million per unit. Bilmes described this to Fortune as an imbalanced situation where costs are disproportionately high compared to the cost of producing drones. That asymmetry has direct implications for how long the United States can sustain its current operational tempo. The Patriot missile system sits at the center of much of this discussion. 18 countries use the Patriot system in addition to the United States, and the United States has provided 600 Patriot missiles to Ukraine and other allies over the course of that ongoing conflict. Lockheed Martin expects to increase annual production of the PAC-3 MSE to 2,000 units per year by 2030, but current annual deliveries stand at approximately 600 per year. CSIS analysts have noted the United States will need to be more deliberate in how it allocates its current supply. Some strategists have advocated stockpiling Patriots for a potential conflict with China, while Ukraine has also continued requesting additional munitions, as have other American allies. These competing demands are converging at precisely the moment when domestic inventories are under their greatest strain in recent memory. We will have more on that right after this. Welcome back. The United States is confronting a significant challenge: the rapid depletion of critical weapons stockpiles, raising alarms among defense analysts, researchers, and elected officials alike. We turn now to the specific operational responses the Pentagon has pursued and the pointed questions being raised in Congress. Faced with the limitations of its most advanced interceptor systems, the United States military and Gulf state partners have begun turning to alternative methods of aerial defense. According to the CSIS analysis, American and Gulf state forces have resorted to deploying helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft equipped with guns as a solution to the limited availability of lower-cost interceptors. The Pentagon does have other options available, including the AIM-120 air-to-air missile, but that system carries its own significant cost of approximately $1 million per unit. While lower than the Patriot's $4 million price tag, it still represents a substantial expense against the relatively modest cost of the drone threats being engaged and does not resolve the underlying supply challenge. This dynamic has left some United States officials openly voicing concern. Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly spoke to CNN last month, noting that Iran possesses a substantial and diverse arsenal. In his words, "The Iranians do have the ability to make a lot of Shah drones, ballistic missiles, medium range, short range, and they've got a huge stockpile. So at some point this becomes a math problem, and how can we resupply air defense munitions? Where are they going to come from?" That question does not yet have a fully resolved answer. Production timelines for complex systems like the Patriot interceptor are measured in years, not months. Lockheed Martin's projected increase to 2,000 PAC-3 MSE units annually is not expected until 2030. In the meantime, the United States must manage its existing supply carefully while balancing the competing demands of allied nations and navigating the financial reality of a conflict already being projected to cost trillions of dollars. The CSIS report is explicit. Pre-war inventories were already insufficient before the Iran conflict began, and the further depletion over 7 weeks has compounded a pre-existing vulnerability. Restoring stockpiles to pre-war levels will take between 1 and 4 years, and those pre-war levels were themselves considered inadequate. The situation is made more complex by the layered simultaneous demands on American munitions: an active conflict with Iran, ongoing supply commitments to Ukraine, requests from other allied nations, and the strategic requirement to remain prepared for a potential future confrontation in the Indo-Pacific. The CSIS report notes that a conflict against a peer competitor like China would consume munitions at substantially higher rates than the current Iran war, making today's depleted inventories an even more pressing concern for long-term strategic planning. The Pentagon has maintained that the United States military has everything it needs for its current mission, and the administration has taken concrete steps, including the Honeywell contract and the historic fiscal year 2027 budget request. Whether those steps will prove sufficient and whether they will materialize quickly enough to address the near-term risk identified by CSIS remains a question that analysts, lawmakers, and military planners are actively working to answer. Do not go away. Welcome back. As we bring our coverage to a close tonight, a new analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies has confirmed that the United States has depleted significant portions of 7 major missile categories within just the first 7 weeks of the conflict with Iran, at least 45% of precision strike missile stockpiles have been used, 50% of THAAD interceptor inventories consumed, and nearly half of Patriot ballistic interceptor missiles expended. The report, authored by Mark Canchin and Chris Park, warns explicitly of a near-term risk to American military readiness should a future conflict arise. The financial dimensions are equally sobering. The United States has already spent an estimated $24 billion on munitions in this conflict, while Linda Bilmes projects the total cost could exceed $1 trillion. President Trump has requested a $1.5 trillion defense budget for fiscal year 2027. Described by the Pentagon as the largest year-over-year increase since World War II, the cost asymmetry between $4 million Patriot interceptors and $20,000 Iranian Shah drones continues to strain inventories, and with production timelines measured in years and allied nations simultaneously competing for the same limited supply, the path to restoration is a long one. CSIS estimates it will take between 1 and 4 years to return inventories to even their pre-war levels analysts had already deemed insufficient. Senator Mark Kelly's question last month remains the most pointed summary of the challenge. Where will the resupply of air defense munitions come from, and how quickly can it arrive? That question now sits firmly at the center of American defense planning. We will continue to follow this story as it develops. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good night.